Girl in the face, big mistake. She was a Muay world champion. Rebecca Thompson's knee flew toward Kesha's face with all the force a 17-year-old girl can muster when she wants to publicly humiliate someone. The Lincoln High School courtyard was packed. Dozens of cell phones already recording what everyone expected to be another episode of the welcome tradition of the school's most feared bully. But something unexpected happened in the next few milliseconds. Kesha Williams, who until then had been standing quietly against the wall with her worn backpack, moved with a fluidity that made time seem to freeze. Not backward as a frightened victim would, forward, intercepting Rebecca's knee with a movement so precise it seemed choreographed. The sound of the impact echoed across the courtyard, but it wasn't the sound everyone expected to hear. "Ouch! My knee!" Rebecca screamed, falling to the ground and clutching her leg as if she had hit a concrete wall. The girl, who should have been bleeding on the floor, remained standing motionless, with an expression that mixed boredom and something that sent a chill down the spine of anyone who was paying attention. Kesha had arrived at Lincoln High just 3 days earlier, transferred from Miami for reasons no one could explain. Brunette, curly hair tied back in a simple bun, worn sneakers, and that strange posture of someone who seems to be constantly relaxed but alert at the same time. At 16, she had learned that being underestimated was the best advantage anyone could have. "Sorry," Kesha said, reaching out to help Rebecca up, her voice calm as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "Automatic reflex. Are you okay?" Rebecca pushed away the offered hand angrily, struggling to stand as she tried to process what had just happened. In the last 2 years, no student at Lincoln High had even thought of fighting back against her taunts. She was the mayor's daughter, captain of the cheerleading squad, and had a reputation built on years of successful intimidation. "What did you do to me?" Rebecca growled, limping slightly. The crowd around them began to whisper. Cell phones continued to record, but now they were capturing something very different from what they expected. Tyler Henderson, Rebecca's best friend and heir to an influential local family, approached with his chest puffed out. "Hey, new girl!" "You don't know who you're messing with," he said, trying to sound intimidating. "Rebecca runs this school." Kesha tilted her head slightly, as if studying an interesting species of insect. For a few seconds, those dark eyes seemed to be assessing not only Tyler and Rebecca, but every person around them. Every angle of escape, every possible next move. "Got it," she replied, adjusting the strap of her backpack on her shoulder. "Well, it was nice meeting you guys." And then, to everyone's complete surprise, she simply began walking toward the school entrance as if nothing had happened. Her steps were light, almost silent, but there was something about the way she moved that made half of those present unconsciously make way for her. Rebecca stood in the middle of the courtyard, still processing what had happened. Her leg hurt in a way she had never felt before, as if she had kicked a steel wall. Worse still, she could feel the stares and hear the whispers around her. "Dude, did you see how fast she was?" Someone muttered. Rebecca couldn't even touch her. Who was that girl? For the first time in years, Rebecca Thompson had found someone who wasn't afraid of her. And as she watched Kesha disappear through the school door, a disturbing thought began to form in her mind. Maybe that quiet new girl wasn't exactly what she seemed. What no one in that courtyard knew was that Kesha Williams carried baggage that would make any school bully look like child's play. And if you're enjoying this story of how an attempt at intimidation turned into the biggest mistake Rebecca could have made, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will show you that sometimes the quietest person in the room is exactly the one you should fear. 2 hours after the incident in the courtyard, Rebecca Thompson was sitting in the school infirmary with an ice pack on her knee. Boiling with rage, the nurse had suggested she go to the hospital for an x-ray. But Rebecca refused, admitting that some girl had hurt her would be too humiliating. "Mom, you need to do something about this girl," Rebecca said on the phone, her voice thick with indignation. "She attacked me in front of everyone." On the other end of the line, Catherine Thompson, the mayor's wife and school board president, sighed impatiently. "Rebecca, honey, you're overreacting. I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding. My knee is bruised." And everyone was filming as if I were the one in the wrong. What Rebecca didn't know was that at that very moment, videos of the incident in the courtyard were already circulating on the school's WhatsApp groups. But they weren't the videos she expected. Instead of showing a bully putting a newcomer in her place, the clips revealed Rebecca falling to the ground after trying to attack a girl who hadn't even fought back. Meanwhile, in the library, Kesha Williams sat alone at a table in the corner, pretending to study while discreetly observing the reactions around her. Groups of students whispered and pointed in her direction, some with curiosity, others with a mixture of admiration and fear. "Hey, you're the new girl, right?" a female voice interrupted her. Kesha looked up and saw an Asian girl with glasses carrying a stack of books. "I'm Janet Kim, editor of the school newspaper. Can I sit down? Kesha nodded, and Janet settled into the chair next to her. Everyone's talking about what happened to Rebecca, Janet said quietly, looking around to make sure no one was listening. Do you have any idea what a mess you've caused? I didn't mean to cause a mess, Kesha replied calmly. I just defended myself. Janet chuckled softly. Defend yourself? Girl, you made Rebecca Thompson look like an amateur. Do you know how long it's been since anyone dared to stand up to her? I didn't stand up to her. I just didn't let her hurt me, yeah, well, the problem is that Rebecca isn't the type to take public humiliation lying down, and her parents have real influence in this town. Kesha slowly closed the book, her eyes meeting Janet's. What kind of influence? Her father has been mayor for 10 years. Her mother controls the school board. Her boyfriend, Hunter Matthews, is the sheriff's son. Basically, she's teenage royalty around here. For a few seconds, Kesha remained silent, processing the information. Then a small smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. I see, Kesha. I'm serious. Rebecca has had people transferred out of school for less. She has the power to make your life hell. Thanks for the warning, Kesha said, standing up and grabbing her backpack. But I think I'll be fine. As Kesha left the library, Janet watched her walk across the courtyard from the window. There was something about that girl's posture, the way she moved, that didn't fit the profile of an ordinary teenager. It was as if every step was calculated. Every movement had a purpose. That same afternoon, Rebecca called an emergency meeting with her inner circle at the Matthews Family Cafe, an establishment that served as the informal headquarters of the city's young elite. In addition to Tyler Henderson, Hunter Matthews, her boyfriend of 2 years, and Madison Foster, her best friend and vice captain of the cheerleading squad, were also present. She disrespected me in front of everyone, Rebecca said, still limping slightly. And now the nerds at school are treating it like I got beat up, Hunter. An 18-year-old blonde boy accustomed to solving problems with his father's money and influence, drummed his fingers on the table. What's her full name? My dad can do some checking. Keisha Williams. She came from Miami 3 days ago. Miami. Madison raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow. I bet she's just another refugee from urban violence who came to try her luck in our quiet little town. Tyler laughed maliciously. Well, she picked the wrong school to try to act tough. Exactly, Rebecca agreed, her eyes sparkling with mischief. And tomorrow, I'm going to show her and everyone else who's really in charge at Lincoln High. What none of them knew was that while they were planning their retaliation at Matthew's Cafe, Kesha was just a few blocks away in the small apartment she shared with her grandmother, practicing a sequence of moves she had learned at the age of 12 at a Muay gym in Bangkok. Her legs moved with hypnotic fluidity, each kick cutting through the air with pinpoint accuracy. The speed was impressive, but it was the power contained in each movement that really caught the eye. The worn leather shin guards she wore bore the marks of years of intensive training. Kesha, dear, don't overdo your training today. Her grandmother called from the kitchen. You need to be rested for school tomorrow. Yes, Grandma, Kesha replied, pausing to drink some water. I'm just warming up. Dorothy Williams, a 71-year-old woman with shrewd eyes and hands calloused from decades of working as a physical therapist, appeared in the living room doorway. She watched her granddaughter for a few seconds before asking, Problems at the new school? Kesha hesitated. Her grandmother had sacrificed so much to get her out of Miami after the incident that had changed their lives forever. The last thing she wanted was to worry the woman who had been her only family for the past 3 years. Nothing I can't handle, she finally replied. Dorothy approached and placed a hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. Kesha, you know you can tell me anything, right? After everything we've been through, I know, Grandma. It's just adjustment. You know how it is, the older woman nodded, but her eyes revealed concern. She knew Kesha too well to believe it was just adjusting, and above all, she knew exactly what her granddaughter was capable of when she felt threatened. Just promise me one thing, Dorothy said, her voice heavy with a weight that Kesha recognized immediately. Promise me you won't forget everything we've learned about control. Kesha stopped drinking water and looked directly into her grandmother's eyes. I promise. But as she made the promise, part of her wondered if it would be possible to keep it, because every racist slur she had heard that first day, every look of contempt, every malicious laugh had awakened a rage that she had spent 3 years learning to control. And when Rebecca Thompson decided to escalate her campaign of intimidation, Kesha wondered if her promise would be enough to contain what was inside her, something her trainers in Bangkok had called the silent storm. The silent storm that only appeared when there was no other choice. Each new humiliation only strengthened something inside her that her future oppressors couldn't see, a silent force fueled by the very injustice they tried to impose. What those privileged people didn't know was that each act of contempt was writing their own sentence of defeat. And when Rebecca Thompson finally discovered who she had really chosen as her target, it would be too late to turn back. The next morning, Kesha arrived at Lincoln High to find her photo printed and plastered on dozens of posters scattered around the main courtyard. The images had been captured from the previous day's videos, but maliciously edited to make her look aggressive and threatening. Warning: violent new student was written in large letters, followed by false information about her history of assaults in Miami. Students moved away when she passed, whispering and pointing. "This is defamation," Janet Kim murmured, appearing beside Kesha with an indignant expression. "They can't just make things up about you." Kesha looked at the posters with that unsettling calm that had become her trademark. "Of course they can. The question is, for how long?" "What do you mean?" "Nothing," Kesha replied, tearing off one of the posters and folding it carefully before putting it in her backpack. "I'm just collecting evidence." Meanwhile, in the principal's office, Rebecca sat comfortably in the leather chair, flanked by her parents and Hunter. Mr. Thompson, mayor of the city for a decade, drummed his fingers on the mahogany desk as he talked to Principal Anderson. "I understand your concern, Mr. Thompson," said the principal, clearly nervous. "But we can't just expel a student without concrete evidence of misconduct." "Evidence?" Catherine Thompson laughed coldly. "My daughter has a bruised knee. Isn't that enough evidence?" Hunter leaned forward, flashing his best political smile inherited from his sheriff father. "Mr. Anderson, we're offering a simple solution. The girl needs specialized help that our school can't provide. A transfer would be best for everyone." Principal Anderson knew exactly what that meant in the language of the local elite. He had seen entire families expelled from town for challenging the wrong people. But there was something about this situation that bothered him. "At least let me talk to the girl first," he finally said. "Standard procedure, of course." Rebecca smiled maliciously. "But I'm sure she'll show her true violent nature in no time." An hour later, Kesha sat in the same chair Rebecca had occupied, but the difference in posture was striking. While Rebecca had sprawled across the chair as if she owned the place, Kesha sat upright, hands clasped, eyes alert. "But respectful Kesha, there have been some concerns about your behavior yesterday," Principal Anderson began carefully. "I see. May I ask what specifically?" The polite and direct response caught him off guard. "Well, Rebecca claims that you assaulted her." "Actually, sir, I defended myself from an attempted assault. There are videos from multiple angles that confirm this." Anderson blinked, surprised. Most teenagers in that situation would be screaming, denying, or crying. Kesha spoke like an adult. "You mentioned videos. Do you have access to them?" Kesha opened her backpack and pulled out a tablet. "Janet Kim from the school newspaper helped me compile recordings from 6 different students. May I show you?" For the next 10 minutes, Anderson watched multiple angles of the incident. In all of them, Rebecca clearly initiated the aggression, and Kesha merely protected herself with an almost imperceptible defensive move. "That's very different from what I was told," he murmured. "I imagine it is," Kesha replied calmly. "Mr. Anderson, may I ask you a personal question?" He nodded, intrigued. "Have you ever been the new kid somewhere? Have you ever felt the weight of having to prove that you deserve to be in a space that others consider exclusively theirs?" The question hit Anderson like a punch in the stomach. He immediately remembered his own early days at that school 15 years ago, when he had to prove to wealthy parents that a principal from a regular public school could run an elite institution. "Yes," he admitted quietly, "I felt that." "Then you understand that I didn't come here looking for trouble. I came looking for an education. But if you force me to choose between my dignity and my safety, I will always choose my dignity." That afternoon, as Rebecca waited anxiously for news of Kesha's expulsion, she received an unexpected message from the principal. "Case closed after review of evidence." Matter resolved, she immediately called Hunter, her voice trembling with anger. "What do you mean, matter resolved?" "That Ike is still at school." "Calm down, love. Maybe it's time for a more creative approach." "What do you mean?" "My dad has contacts everywhere. We can make her life hell in other ways. Background checks, documentation issues, immigration issues." Rebecca smiled for the first time in days. "Now you're talking my language." But what neither of them knew was that at that very moment, Kesha was sitting in the basement of Janet Kim's house, connected to a video call with a serious-looking man in a clearly professional office. "Hi, Daddy," Kesha said softly. "Hi, Warrior." Marcus Williams replied, and for the first time in days, she smiled genuinely. "I got your report. It looks like you're dealing with the same kind of situation that brought us to Miami 3 years ago. Worse, these guys have real political power." Marcus Williams adjusted his glasses, revealing his FBI badge pinned to his shirt. "Well, sweetheart, they're not the only ones with connections. And unlike last time, you're not alone now." "What do you mean?" Let's just say the FBI has a particular interest in small-town corruption cases. And conspiracy to harm a minor using public resources is exactly the kind of thing that keeps us busy. Kesha closed her eyes for a moment, remembering her grandmother's words about control. When she opened them again, there was something different in them. Not anger, but resolve, Dad. I need you to know that I'm going to keep my promise to Grandma. I'm going to stay in control. I know you will, warrior. But control doesn't mean being a doormat. It means choosing your battles wisely. After hanging up the phone, Kesha remained seated in the quiet basement, processing the implications of what was about to happen. Janet watched her with a mixture of admiration and nervousness. Is your dad really with the FBI? Among other things, Kesha replied cryptically. Janet, I need to ask you something important. Are you prepared to see this through to the end? Because once we start documenting everything officially, there's no turning back. Janet swallowed hard, but her eyes flashed with determination. I'm tired of seeing people like Rebecca walk all over everyone without consequences. I'm in. Kesha nodded, then opened her tablet and began typing something that made Janet's eyes widen. What is that? A formal report to the FBI about possible municipal corruption and abuse of power against minors. Kesha paused, looking directly at Janet. You know, in Bangkok. My trainers taught me that there are two kinds of strength. The kind that breaks things, and the kind that builds bridges over chasms. I think it's time to build some bridges outside. Night was falling on the small town that Rebecca Thompson and her friends considered their personal kingdom. But inside that basement, two girls were about to prove that true power doesn't come from who you know, but from how much truth you have the courage to reveal. And when you combine the lethal skills of a Muay champion with the investigative resources of the FBI, even the most solid empires can crumble in a matter of days. On Friday morning, Rebecca woke up with a sense of anticipated victory. Hunter had called the night before, confirming that his father, Sheriff Matthews, had found some irregularities in Kesha's school records, and that a routine check would be conducted that same day. It'll be easy, Rebecca had said on the phone, applying pink nail polish as she spoke. A black girl from Miami, no money, no connections. Who's gonna believe her word against ours? But when Rebecca arrived at Lincoln High at 7:30 a.m., the first thing she saw were the black vehicles parked in front of the school. They weren't local police cars. They were federal SUVs with government license plates, and men in dark suits were talking authoritatively in the main courtyard. What's going on? Rebecca asked Madison, who was watching the scene with a confused expression. I don't know. I heard it's some kind of federal investigation. In Principal Anderson's office, a surreal scene was unfolding. Marcus Williams, special agent with the FBI, sat at the main table, flanked by two other federal agents. His gold badge gleamed under the fluorescent light. Mr. Anderson, Marcus said in a calm but firm voice, this investigation began as an isolated case of abuse of power against my daughter, but it has expanded significantly in the last 48 hours. Anderson swallowed hard. Your daughter, Kesha Williams, the girl you tried to expel based on false reports. At that moment, Hunter Matthews burst into the office without knocking, followed closely by his father, Chief Deputy Robert Matthews. What the hell is going on here? Who are you people? Marcus Williams rose slowly, his imposing height filling the space. Special Agent Marcus Williams, FBI, and you must be Sheriff Matthews. The color drained from Robert Matthews's face as he realized the magnitude of the situation. Agent Williams, there's been some misunderstanding. Actually, Sheriff, I believe the understanding is quite clear. Marcus motioned to one of the agents, who opened a tablet and projected a screen onto the wall. In the last 72 hours, we have intercepted 23 communications between city officials planning to harm a minor using public resources. The first recording began to play. It was Hunter's unmistakable voice. My dad can do some checks. We can make her life hell in other ways. Hunter turned pale as a sheet. That was taken out of context. Context. Marcus smiled coldly. Let's see some more context then. The second recording was of Chief Matthews himself talking to Mayor Thompson. A complete background check should solve the girl's problem. If we find something, we find something. If we don't find anything, we create something. The silence in the office was deafening. Dad, Hunter whispered, his voice breaking. Marcus continued relentlessly. We also have evidence that this pattern of behavior is not new. Over the past 3 years, 7 minority families have been forced to leave the city after similar investigations. Director Anderson was visibly sweating. Agent Williams, I didn't know anything about this. We know, Mr. Anderson. In fact, your attempts to protect my daughter have been documented and will be considered favorably. At that moment, the door opened and Keisha walked in calmly, followed by Janet Kim, who was carrying a professional camera. Hi, Dad, Kesha said simply. Marcus smiled for the first time. "Hi, warrior. How was school today?" "Educational," she replied, looking directly at Hunter, whose eyes were wide with shock and terror. Janet turned on the camera. "For the school newspaper," she explained. But everyone knew that these images would go far beyond a student publication. "Hunter," Kesha said with that unsettling calm that had become her trademark. "Remember when you said I didn't know who I was messing with?" Hunter couldn't respond. "Well, now you know who you were messing with." Marcus regained control of the situation. "Deputy Matthews, you are being charged with abuse of authority, conspiracy to harm a minor, and falsification of official documents. Hunter Matthews, as a minor, will be prosecuted in juvenile court for the same crimes." "That's impossible," Robert Matthews stammered. "I've been chief deputy for 15 years, you were," Marcus corrected. "Your powers were suspended an hour ago by federal order, through the office windows." Rebecca watched the scene with a mixture of horror and incomprehension. When she saw Hunter being escorted by federal agents toward the black cars, she finally understood that she had drastically underestimated her opponent. Kesha appeared at the office door and motioned for Rebecca to approach. "You wanted to talk to me?" Rebecca asked, trying to maintain a shred of arrogance. "Actually, I wanted to thank you," Kesha said genuinely. "Thank me? Your attempt to intimidate me revealed a system of corruption that had been hurting families for years. You helped me uncover something much bigger than a simple schoolyard fight." Rebecca was silent, slowly processing that she had been a pawn in a game much bigger than she could comprehend. "One question, Rebecca," Kesha continued. "When you tried to hit me that first day, what did you expect to happen?" I thought you were just another scared girl." Kesha smiled softly. "You know, in Bangkok, my coaches taught me that the most powerful technique in Muay isn't the strongest attack. It's knowing when not to attack." Rebecca frowned, confused. "You see, if I had fought back that day, it would have been just another teenage fight. But by choosing not to fight back, I allowed you to reveal who you really were. And when you escalated to political corruption, you revealed something much bigger." At that moment, Catherine Thompson, Rebecca's mother and the mayor's wife, came running down the hallway. "Rebecca, your father just got arrested." The empire the Thompson family had built over a decade was crumbling in a matter of hours. And it had all started with a failed attempt to intimidate a quiet girl they assumed was defenseless. As the sirens of the federal cars drove away from Lincoln High, Kesha stood still in the courtyard where it had all begun. Janet approached her with the camera still rolling. "How do you feel?" Janet asked. Kesha looked at the exact spot where Rebecca had tried to hit her a week ago. "I feel that sometimes justice takes time to find its way. But when it does, it is absolute." The question that remained unanswered was not whether Rebecca and her family would be able to recover from the public humiliation and federal charges, but whether an entire community could rebuild trust in its institutions, after discovering how deep the corruption ran that had been disguised as order and respectability for so long. 6 months later, Lincoln High School had become unrecognizable. Rebecca Thompson now attended a public school on the other side of the state after her family lost everything in the federal investigations. Her father was serving a 4-year sentence for corruption. While her mother worked as a secretary to support the family, Hunter Matthews had been sent to a juvenile rehabilitation program, where he was learning about the real consequences of abusing family power. The political empire that their families had built over decades had collapsed in a matter of weeks. Kesha, meanwhile, had become a local legend, not only for the events that exposed the corruption, but for the way she chose to move forward. She founded a self-defense and self-esteem program for young people, teaching that true strength comes from self-control and justice, not violence. "You know what impresses me the most?" Janet Kim asked as she filmed Kesha teaching basic Muay Thai techniques to a group of students. "You never really took revenge on Rebecca. You just let her reveal herself," Kesha smiled, adjusting a student's posture. "The best fight is the one you win without having to fight. Rebecca tried to destroy me using privilege and corruption, but in the end, she only exposed a system that was already rotten." Marcus Williams watched from the back of the room, proud. His daughter had learned the most important lesson Bangkok had taught her. That true martial strength lies not in being able to hurt someone, but in having the discipline to choose not to. The city now functioned under new leaders elected transparently. The old system of favoritism had been replaced by fair and inclusive public policies. "When someone tries to put you down," Kesha told her students that day, "remember, they are revealing more about themselves than about you. Justice always finds a way, especially when you have the patience to let it work." Rebecca Thompson had tried to break the spirit of a quiet girl from Miami, but ended up destroying an entire corrupt empire. Kesha proved that sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply allowing the truth to come to light. Have you ever been in a situation where patience and intelligence won out over brute force? Share your story in the comments and subscribe to the channel